All right. Hey, everybody. It is Dave from Gravity Wiz. Welcome to our workshop, the Notion Connection Workshop. If you're not familiar with Notion, it is essentially a build your own software. I think Notion themselves call it Legos for software. And it's really cool because it lets you build whatever you need to solve whatever problems that you're having. So our connection for Notion is part of our Gravity Connect suite. And I'm going to give you a quick little preview of that. Right here. So this is Gravity Connect. It's our newest suite. It's dedicated to connecting Gravity Forms to, basically the top services in the world. It launches with Notion, OpenAI, and Google Sheets. We'll actually get to give you a little taste of OpenAI as well during this workshop. But again, the focus will primarily be on Notion. So why did we build Gravity Connect? There's solutions out there that can connect Gravity Forms data to other services. One of the big ones is Zapier. But if you've used Zapier as we did, it's pretty cost prohibitive, especially if you're trying to do a lot of things, make a lot of zaps, connect your Gravity Forms data to a lot of different services. And we realized also that sometimes those connections were just not that robust. We wanted to do something a little bit nicer, a little bit more integrated with the Gravity Forms ecosystem. And that is what led us to Gravity Connect. The other big thing, again, I kind of hinted at it there with the Zapier, but just robust integrations that are also very affordable. Now, before we dive in, I just want to remind everybody that this is a recorded session and it will be available on our YouTube channel, usually immediately afterwards. So if you have to bail for any reason, definitely come back to our YouTube channel and catch up on whatever you missed. All right, so with that said, I'm going to go over really quickly what our workshop goals are for today. So obviously, goal number one, we want to show you how Notion can help your business, how Notion, just how awesome it is. Again, we've been using it for 4 or 5 years now. It's incredible. And to kind of help with that, we're going to build a tool and show a workflow that integrates with that tool in Notion. That's actually useful for us, something that we have been wanting to do. And by eating our own dog food, I'm hopeful that we'll expose a lot of functionality that you will want to use with your own workflows. And then lastly, we're hoping to just introduce a lot of other tools that we use, some of our own products that assist in our day-to-day usage of Gravity Forms. And again, hopefully show you just how the whole package of Gravity Wiz can really just allow you to do anything with Gravity Forms. All right, let's dive in. So the use case we're going to explore here is essentially a job application. Back earlier this year, we were looking to hire a content writer, and we had a flow that we've been using for a long time. And we just kind of was basically at that point, after going through it again, that we're like, this is not working. So let me tell you what worked and what didn't work. So first of all, Gravity Forms makes building the actual application form super easy. You can add any of the fields that you want to collect data for. And honestly, like, application forms are pretty simple in and of themselves. So Gravity Forms has us covered there. But the issue was when we got to the entries part. When we actually got into trying to vet these candidates and figure out, like, which point of the process a given candidate was on, which candidates were like the standout candidates, which candidates we were just kind of like a little unsure about, all of that, it was just so hard to accomplish in the Gravity Forms entry view. And we kept saying over and over again, like, how awesome would it be if we could get Gravity Forms, or we can get these Gravity Forms entries into Notion, which again, we've been using for a long time. And we knew that we could build whatever workflow that we wanted for those entries inside of Notion. And that was a big motivation for us to make Notion a top priority when we decided to pursue Gravity Connect. So what we're going to do for this use case is we're going to build a job application board in Notion. We're going to send those job applications from our Gravity Forms powered form to Notion when they're submitted. And then lastly, we're going to explore how Notion can make managing those applications just a lot easier. And by a lot, I mean a lot. Okay, so first up, let's just walk through this application form. So nothing too fancy here. We're going to collect their name, their email, because we're going to need to stay in touch with them. The time zone, that was important to us because we do like a lot of onboarding, especially in the first 3 months. And so knowing what time zone they were in was going to be super helpful in that process. Then we just kind of asked them a lot of questions. We want to kind of get to know them as early in this process as possible. So we talk about their experience, education, and skills. In this case, again, it's a content writer position. We wanted to know about their thoughts on essentially how they approach copywriting. So in this case, how do you determine your target audience? We talked to them about, what is it like to work with you? And we get some really good responses from this question. Again, getting back into like just how they perceive writing. this is more like a technical question. We want to know what their experience with SEO is like, as you know, we do a lot of content marketing. Then we get into some of the like desired yearly salary, their resume, and they want to include one. You'll notice that this is not required, just because we are pretty loosey-goosey with that kind of stuff. We really care about your skills, less so than your credentials. Credentials can always follow. And then last but not least, we have a quick writing exercise. And this was just to kind of just see, hey, like, don't spend too much time on this, but just write something quickly so we can get a sense of A, how quickly you can assimilate information, and B, how can you convey that information to us? Like, what kind of insights can you share with us based on, you know, your exploration of our products? So that's the whole form. And so now what we want to do is we want to get this data into Notion, but before we can get it into Notion, we need to decide where it's going to go in Notion. And so to that end, we are going to add a new page. And technically, this is going to be adding a new database. So we're going to call this job applications. And we're going to name this, or we're going to give it an icon, excuse me, a little briefcase, make it all official. And then rather than a table view, I think that a board view would work a lot better for what we're trying to do. Now, from there, it's time to add some properties. So we'll go down to our properties here. We'll leave tags for now. We may not need it. But we're going to add a new property for status. Oh, actually, we'll get a select, though. And then we'll name that select status. And then down here, we're going to add some options. Submitted. Let's see here. Interview. What are my other ones? Shortlisted. And rejected. So those will be all of the options in this field. And then we're going to go and we're going to add some more properties. So next up would be a date. So not the interview date. We actually just want to get a date field here. And this will just be the date of the application. And all those values are fine. So now we can go back and we're going to add the desired salary. So we can track that in here. Oops, we actually want to do a number. And I'm going to go ahead, because this is going to be a salary and we're requesting it in US dollars. We're going to put it here. And then we're going to do email. I'm just going to name this actual email. And one thing I'm going to point out really quick is that you'll see that Notion uses AI already to kind of determine what you're building. And it will give you suggested fields based on that. So for example, I do want to add a resume. We'll just ditch the file part. And then let's look and see if there's anything else. We've already kind of added our own status field. And we've already got an email. So let's see what else is missing. The entry URL. And so this is just a way to kind of make a tighter link between the Notion card and the source in Gravity Forms, which would be, again, this entry URL. And then a time zone, which can just be a text field. Oops. Oh, let's go here. Text and make that time zone. Let's see, last one. Oh, we already got the resume, so we're good. So those are going to be all the properties that we are associating with each card or applicant that comes into this board. And I know that I made one mistake already. Email. Oh, it looks like I didn't get the entry URL. So let's try that again. So let's add a new property and do entry URL. Actually, we'll do a URL field and then make that entry URL. There we go. Okay. So those are all of our properties, and we'll just leave that there for now. So last thing that we're going to do on this view is that we're going to go ahead and configure the board. We want to group this. Right now, it's grouped by this tags property, but we actually want to group it by the status, and that's going to give you that kind of classic Kanban effect. And you can see that it's shown all of our hidden groups here. So we're going to go into each of these, and we're going to go to show the group. We're going to do shortlisted. We're going to show that group. And then lastly, we're going to get submitted. We're going to show that group. We're going to leave hidden. We're going to leave rejected hidden. And we're also going to go ahead and hide the no status group. And then the idea here is that once it's rejected, you don't really care to see it anymore. You don't really need it in your line of sight, but it's still very accessible. And so now this is kind of the order, the flow that it will go through. Everyone will come into the submitted queue. And then the people that are identified as worthy of being interviewed would then move into the interview queue. And then based on the interview, they'll either be rejected or shortlisted, and they come there. And then usually you'll make a job offer to somebody in the shortlisted queue. So that's it. We've got our whole little system set up in Notion now. We're going to make some tweaks to this after we get some data in here. But the next step is we've built our form. We've built the destination for that form. Now let's show let's show how to get that data from Gravity Forms into Notion. So we're going to go to our application content writer. We're going to go to settings, scroll down to Notion. And you can see I already have some feeds set up here, but we're going to ignore those. I'm going to do one from scratch. We're going to say send applicant to Notion. And then we're going to go down here to select an account. And we're going to select the shared account that we use for demos. And now I don't see anything here because we just created the database. So now I'm going to go here to connect it. And I'm going to go to select pages. Oh, I'm logged in with mine. Let's go to shared. So let's ditch that and let's go to our job applications and we'll click allow access. Awesome. And now we can go and select that as the database that we want to send the entry to. And now we're just going to go through and match each of these up to their equivalent field. So again, the time zone field is going to go into the time zone property in Notion. I'm going to come back to entry URL. Application date, we're going to map that to the entry date, the day that the entry was submitted. The status, we are going to map that. You can see all of the statuses are here. We're going to say that all of these, every new entry will be entered into the submitted status by default. And we're going to go down to the resume and we'll map that to our resume field. And then desired salary, again, just mapping it to the desired salary field. Email to email. Name to name. And then we're ready for the entry URL. Okay, so on this one, we're going to jump over really quick to entries. And I'm just going to go and view one of these entries. And I'm going to just copy everything from here down. And this will just get us up to the lead ID, which is what that stands for. And yeah, a little quick Gravity Forms history for you. Entries used to be called leads in Gravity Forms. And so there's all sorts of little places in the code. And sometimes you'll see it there in like the query strings where entries are still kind of hinted at as leads. And let me actually walk through what I just did. So right now, we don't actually want to map this to a specific property. We want to add a custom value. So I'm going to select the add custom value here. And I'm going to paste in that URL. And then I'm going to go to the insert merge tags. We know this looks a little weird. Gravity Forms is going to fix this in there. It's part of their settings framework. And we're going to go all the way down to the entry ID. And so that will generate a link that will link us directly to the entry detail view in Gravity Forms. And it's going to map that to the entry URL property in Notion. Okay. So now we're ready to populate the page content. This will be all of the questions that we asked them. So we're going to go there. We're going to come here and do heading 1. And then I'm just going to type in. You'll notice that, let me just do that a little slower. As soon as I add a curly brace, our merge tag menu pops up. And as we type, it searches. And it's really cool. I'm going to show you in a second here. For now, we're just going to start from the top of the string and just, what experience, and boom, that's it. And then this one will go when you find it. So you can see it really makes it pretty painless to do this. What is like to work with you? Let's give her that extra space. And then what is this one? In your opinion. So in your opinion. And then this is the one I'm going to show you. You'll notice that all the other ones I've started from the top of the string to search, but it will find it anywhere. So we could just type in SEO, for example, on this one, and it finds the merge tag we're looking for. Boom. And so that will, again, get all mapped to the Notion page content. Now, I'm not going to demo this today, but we do support the ability to update the Notion card, or the Notion page when the entry is updated. This is also a very popular feature in Google Sheets. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask, but we aren't going to demo that today. So now we're going to save the settings, and we're good. Like, everything's set up now. So let's go ahead and submit some entries. And oh, speaking of fun tools, this is powered by Live Preview. So if you saw the form in the regular preview, actually, this is even a customized preview from that. But this would normally load Gravity Form's default preview. But Live Preview is a really helpful tool for a couple ways. A, it lets you preview the form, what it's going to look like as it's embedded on your actual site. I'm using 2024 for this demo. But the other cool thing is it has all sorts of little features that allow you to troubleshoot a lot more easily. So for example, you can enable AJAX on your forms in preview to better match maybe how you have your form configured on the front end. Again, makes troubleshooting a lot easier. You can show hidden fields. This is useful if you're using like dynamic population and you want to see what's actually being captured in this hidden field. You can just show it on the form. You can unrequire, so all of your fields would be required. If you check this, then they're just immediately unrequired. Again, makes troubleshooting issues so much easier instead of having to jump through and submit data for like every single form field. We also have single page. This is very useful if you have a very long multi-page form and you just want to either you want to submit it more quickly. You're not trying to recreate the user's end experience, but you just want to get the job done and just submit an entry. Then single page can be immensely useful for that. Disable notifications if you don't want to send a notification. This is great if you're working on a client's website. You want to test the live form, but you don't want to alarm the client with some, test notification garbage. You can just click that button and it will disable notifications for that submission. And then lastly, Gravity Forms has a number of form restrictions, such as making sure the user's logged in, or entry limits, or like a form schedule. And you can ignore all of this with Live Preview. So with that little segue, let's go ahead and preview the form. And I'm going to use a little tool called Fake Filler just to fill out some data really quick. And I will go ahead. I have a fake resume here. Let's bump that up to a better number. All right. And then let's submit this. Oh, you know what I did, y'all? I left something active. I'm going to deactivate this really quick because I don't want you guys to see that yet. But you can come over here now to the job applications and you can see that our submission was complete. Probably should have done a more normal name here. Let's just change this to Dave Smith so it's a little easier to digest. But there's a lot of data here that we may not want to see in this view. And it's really easy to solve that. We can just go to properties here and we can say, hey, we don't really care about the status in this view because we're already showing the board in the context of status. Application date, email, we'll leave resume just because that might be a nice one if you just want to get a quick glance at their resume. And maybe we'll leave time zone as well. And we'll take off entry URL. Let me take off that. There you go. So just kind of like whatever you decide is like the most important information for you. You just can decide what to include in this view here. So what else do I want to cover with this? So here's some other cool things we can do here. So now let's just kind of walk through like this process with this submitted. So we've submitted the form. The applicant has arrived in Notion. We can go in here now and we can review their answers. And this is where it kind of like it's going to be helpful for us, because one of the issues that we had is there wasn't a great way to communicate about the customers. You can technically use entry notes, but it's all the way down at the bottom, and you can't like actually ping somebody. So for example, if I shared this with Clay, Cole, and myself, then I could do something like, Cole, what do you think about this candidate? Boom. And then Cole would get a notification in his Notion account, he could come and take a look, make a decision. And then after we've talked, we might decide, hey, let's pass. Didn't look like they put enough effort into the application. And then we can just take them and go right to rejected. All right. So let's go back here, and we're going to submit another one. And I'll use fake filler again. And this time I learned my lesson. We're going to actually use a name there. And we won't even include a resume this time. We'll just submit it. We'll go back to Notion over here. All right, let's debug it. So we'll go to entries really quick, see if there's a reason this entry did not make it through. Oh, it says it did. So I think Notion just is cached right now. Oh, there it is. Okay, just took a second. That actually might have been, so the entire Gravity Connect framework uses something called Action Scheduler to essentially guarantee that these entries are going to make it into whatever service that you're integrating with. And because of that, it sends it to a queue, and that queue gets processed. Most of the time, that was like a little bit on the longer end that I've seen. Most of the time, it's nearly instantaneous. But every once in a while, if there's like another job in the queue ahead of it, it may take a couple extra seconds. But we'll look at Roger Wind, and for whatever reason, let's just say that we like him more. We can just say, strong candidate, let's interview. And we'll hit that, and then we'll go up to status here and put it in the interview one. Now, obviously, you can also drag and drop. I just find that I often, in this context, I would usually use the status option here just because it makes it a lot easier to do rather than just like backing out again. With that said, I will say, like, after you actually do the interview, you may not go back into this card, or you may come in here and add some notes about the interview, how it went. But that would be a more organic opportunity, though, to use the drag and drop, in my opinion. And now they're shortlisted. And so now once this is shortlisted, obviously you'll wait, probably get a few candidates in the shortlist. You may do another step. We often do an assessment, a paid assessment, where we'll ask them to write an article. In this case, that's exactly what we did. We gave everyone a couple article ideas and said, hey, essentially, like, pick one of these, write an article. We'll pay you for your time, and that will essentially help us make a final decision. All right. First of all, any questions about what I've covered so far?
I do have one here from Adam. He's curious if Notion fees will include conditional logic at some point.
Yes, 100%. It's actually, I think, honestly, a total oversight that we didn't include it, because it is part of the framework. So definitely coming, let's say next week, Adam. It'll be very trivial for us to add support for that, and we'll make it happen.
Cool. There's one more here, also from Adam, and he says, additionally, will Notion feeds offer conditional shortcodes in the page content template?
That's a great question. I would assume, I don't know if you've already tested this and they didn't work. But again, I would expect them to work, conditional shortcodes. And if anyone's not familiar, let me give you a little crash course on these. We have a great walkthrough on this here. But conditional shortcodes, it looks something like this, where you can essentially include the shortcode that says, hey, like, if this value or this field value matches this value, then show this information. And so it's a great way to kind of make that content more dynamic. Worth noting, depending on the use case, if you're doing something like very complex, like a lot of complex changes, depending on conditional logic, you might just consider using the conditional logic that we're going to add here, Adam, to just create 2 different feeds, and then you can just dictate which feed gets processed. But for small changes in the content itself, then yeah, 100%. If it's not supported, Adam, let us know, and we can get that added very easily. All right. Anything else before I move on?
You're good to go.
Let's do it then. So a few bonus thoughts as we kind of conclude the job application demo. First of all, affordability. Zapier, let's see what the cost is here. So Zapier, first of all, we got 200 applicants for this content writer position. Zapier starts at 100 tasks a month. And then after that, you have to get the professional version, which is $20 a month. And again, that's $20 a month if you pay yearly. So it's $30 a month otherwise, which again, that $30 a month, that's 2 months, and you've already paid for Gravity Connect for the year. Too easy, right? And again, that's been one of the goals with Gravity Connect. Even for us, you know, it just hurts to have to pay so much for things that you're going to be doing like constantly. And it's not like there's like a huge burden on the server to do these things. So you're just really just paying for that access. And with Gravity Connect, you pay a yearly fee. $60 is our lowest plan. And you can do as many as you want. The limit is only, you know, your own hardware and whatever the rate limit is on the server, which again, you're very unlikely to run into practical limits there. Next thing I wanted to mention is that everything that we just demoed in our little job application is going to be possible soon with our upcoming Airtable connection. I thought that would be interesting to know just because we've gotten a ton of demand for Airtable. It's definitely like our #1 requested integration since we launched, even before we launched Gravity Connect, but especially since we launched Gravity Connect. Y'all have been ringing the bell for Airtable. So that's coming. And again, everything that I've just demoed will be possible with Airtable as well. Next, I did have this cool thought while I was building out this demo. Wouldn't it be cool if we could use OpenAI to pre-assess the candidates? Again, we had over 200 applications for this position, and that shout out to Cole.
Sorry, Dave, I gotta jump in here. We actually got like 1,200 applications for that position.
Oh my goodness, was it really 1,200? I only saw 200 in the entries. Did we like delete some?
Yeah, we archived a bunch. I think the
okay
is wrong, but I guess the same thing would apply to what you were mentioning about Zapier, right? It would be about 1,200 connection points.
Yeah. Well, there you go, y'all. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of demand for these kinds of positions, and it is an incredible burden as the reviewer to go through all that, you know. And how do you do that in a meaningful way? We did our best. And I will say, I got to go ahead and give a shout out to our process, because we ended up with an absolutely incredible writer. Her name's Danny. You can see some of the work that she's been doing on our blog here. So again, it is possible to find the needle in the haystack in this process, but we couldn't help but just imagine a world where we didn't have to do so much of that legwork. And again, shout out to Cole, who did most of that legwork. I know it was, I think he legitimately got eye strain from reading so much during that process.
It's true.
And that's the other thing. Oh, go ahead, Cole.
No, it's true.
Yeah. And the other thing to note is, you know, especially with this position, content writers, they're going to write. They're going to write a lot in their application. So it was a ton of reading. So again, that's why it kind of inspired me to think about, I was like, man, there's got to be a way to tap AI in to kind of flag the underqualified candidates, to flag the viable candidates, and maybe even to flag the candidates that are like truly exceptional, the ones that we should be reviewing first and helping us decide like how much deeper into this pile do we need to dig before we make a decision. So with that said, let me introduce you to OpenAI. It's again, another one of our connections, works beautifully with Notion, and I'm going to show you how. First, I'm gonna go ahead and activate this feed. In this case, I'm just going to just kind of demo what I already built instead of building it again from scratch, but it's pretty straightforward. So we've given it a name. I usually try to name these feeds based on their purpose. In this case, it's to assess an applicant. I'm using the assistance endpoint, and that's because we are in the process of adding support for attachments to assistants. So that means that you can attach a file and the assistant can parse that file and give you feedback back about that file. So let me just step a little further in this process here. So I went ahead and I've selected, I have this Wizards Apprentice assistant set up here. Nothing really special on that end, just because I wanted to demo the functionality. But this is normally, you would actually do a lot of the assistant work in the assistant's UI through OpenAI to kind of tweak the settings, get it just the way you like it. But in this case, it's pretty much just like a dummy assistant, but we are attaching this message to it, or we're sending this message to the assistant. And we're essentially saying, let me pull this up so you guys can see a little bit better. We want to review the following submitted information, including the attached resume. You'll notice right here. And let me just show you this really quick, because I think we nailed the UI on this, if I could toot our own horn a little bit. But you come up here and you can either select a file from the media library. This is great if you want to compare something with like a static list, like, hey, is this email present in this list? Or something like that. But again, in this case, we actually want to send the user submitted file to the assistant for review. So we're going to map it to that resume field. And so then whatever PDF is uploaded to this resume field, it's going to be forwarded to this assistant, and the assistant is going to assess it based on the instructions you have here. So again, including the attached resume, and return a single word from the following pool: underqualified, viable, or exceptional, based on how well they fit the following criteria. So the criteria here essentially, like, are they good at communicating? Is the writing fun and has personality? And do they have any demonstrated skills with WordPress or basic coding knowledge? And then I stress to it, because I really only want it to return a single word. So I stress only return a single word. And then last but not least, I just include the Gravity Forms all fields merge tag, which again, super easy to insert, because you can just go right here to the merge tag selector and select it to get it in there. And so that's going to send everything that we know about this candidate to the assistant to get it assessed. Now, if you wanted to capture this as part of the entry, say you weren't using this with Notion, then you could map it to a field on the form. In our case, we actually don't need this, and I'm going to show you why in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And oh, actually, for everyone wondering what Adam was asking about with conditional logic, most of our Gravity Connect plugins already have this conditional logic section here. And so, yeah, this is what is going to be added to Notion as well. So you can essentially decide based on what is submitted, whether or not you want to run it. Like, so for example, if you didn't want to process this for like, I can't even think of a good example for this use case. Maybe, here's a good example. Maybe they didn't submit like a writing exercise or one of the optional fields, and that's just like assigned to you that it was like a low effort submission, and you just don't want to waste the AI tokens to assess it. You could just say like, hey, if that's empty, then just don't process this. Again, I apologize, not the best use case, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, so the OpenAI feed is set up now and it's active. So now we're going to go back. Okay, that's just scaring me. Let me just save it again just to make sure. So now we're going to go back to Notion. We're going to go to our feed that we have set up here, and we're going to add a new field here, and we're going to go down. Oh, actually, let's go back to Notion itself, and we're going to go and, oh, you know what? We can actually just use the tags. That's what I was thinking. We'll use the tags. And so with the tags, we are going to map it down to the assess applicant. So whatever response we get from this AI feed, it's going to map as a tag on this field. And so we'll save. And again, we already have the tag set up in Notion, so we can preview this. Now we'll start off by doing another fake filler. Let's get a different name in here. Chain awesome. And we'll submit this. Let's come over here. Oh, that arrived just as I expected. And I don't think that we're showing tags on this. So let me go to properties and we're going to enable tags. There you go. So now we can see at a glance that this is an underqualified candidate. And obviously, if you look at it, you can see why this candidate may be underqualified for a writing position. But let's go back to the form now. And let's just submit, an average one. So I'm going to use the fake filler just to fill out most of the fields. And we'll say that maybe I'm a viable candidate. Let's see. So let's get some of these questions. I already have some pre-written answers. And no, I did not write these myself. So yeah, don't read this and think you're reading my biography. All right, I think we got one more. The SEO question. Oh, and then we have the writing exercise. All right, and then let's go down to the writing exercise and we'll get that last one in there. Perfect. Okay. And just for fun, let's include a resume to increase our chances of being a viable candidate. And then let's submit. Now, since we're submitting a file, it may take a little bit longer to submit because we're going to actually upload that file and OpenAI is going to parse the file and again, make its assessment based on that combination of data. And worth noting, if you want, you can configure the feeds to be async. I am curious how that would work given that we have a Notion feed dependent on it. We should explore that sometime. But now let's hop over to Notion. Okay, not bad. I actually was vetted as a viable candidate. So that makes me feel good. That's awesome. And if we go in here and we look, you can kind of see like, okay, yeah, like this person, they spent some time on this. They didn't just write in garbage answers. And then of course we can come in and take a look at the resume and see like, okay, they have some experience, they have some skills. Okay, awesome. So we feel good about this candidate. And again, right into the workflow. Let's interview this candidate, see what they're all about. Okay. Any questions on how we've implemented AI here to assess candidates?
I'm not seeing any right now, but I'll let you know if any pop up.
Awesome. Then the last thought that I have about job applications is that if we weren't already using Notion, I had this thought. That's the reason I love doing workshops is because it really makes me engage with the products in like a very practical way. And it occurred to me that if we weren't already using Notion, then entry blocks would be such a good solution for building a similar system completely within the WordPress or completely within your WordPress website. And just to kind of like give you a little quick glance over, like basically entry blocks allows you to display your entry data on the front end, allows you to edit it. You can view single entries. It's basically just like almost like a more robust and customizable version of Gravity Form's backend entry manager. And I'll definitely link to a good video. This one is the one I was going to link to here because it really shows how awesome this is. Let me mute this and just kind of catch you up to a point where you can actually see like a finished product here. There we go. So you can build stuff like this. You could arguably build like a Kanban. It'd take a little bit of work to do the exact Kanban style, but the list view is also super powerful too. So if that's something that you'd like to see me demo, like actually, hey, let me try to build out this page in Notion or the Notion concept in, if I try to build out the Notion concept in WordPress with entry blocks, let me know because that could be a really fun workshop to do.
Just to interrupt here, I got a few more. I think these are in regards to Notion specifically, but Vincent's asking if what you just described could be effectively used to vet sales leads that submit lead forms.
100%. Yeah. The limitation is only like how well you can craft your assistant and the prompts that you provide it. There obviously is going to be some trial and error. Like, for example, I had a heck of a time getting it to mark any of my test applicants as exceptional. So maybe I need to like lower the bar there and tweak that prompt a little bit. So definitely, again, a little experimentation there. But in all of my cases, anytime I submitted something that was like clear garbage, it knew that that was garbage. And anything that was like semi-viable, it would tell me like, hey, that's viable. So definitely good at pass-fail assessments. And I think I could improve that prompt to get it to do a better job of actually like multi-tiered assessments where it's actually almost like ranking them.
Nice. I have another one here from Brian. He's saying the AI feed must occur before the Notion feed so it can return the assessment when it fires the Notion feed, correct?
Absolutely, Brian. So my thinking was if there was a way to control the order of those, so you can mark them both as async. Yeah, so the AI feed will fire first, but right now, if it's not async, but if you wanted to make them async so that, again, that initial submission for the user would be faster, that's where I need to test and make sure that you can actually control, say like, hey, this is the order of events that I want these feeds to fire in. Honestly, that might be a great addition to our FeedForge plugin. Let me show you that here. And with FeedForge right now, its primary benefit is it lets you bulk process feeds. But there's all sorts of things that you can do with feeds that you may want additional control over. For example, we ended up adding it to the feed level, but if you ever wanted to process feeds like async, that could be something that could be controlled through FeedForge as well in the future. So yeah, definitely a viable question and something that we're gonna have to explore for async feeds.
Yeah, it might work with async feeds if you enable the edit option on the Notion feed, depending on what hooks we're listening to. Because if the Notion feed runs faster, it will make it to Notion, and then once OpenAI comes back, the entry gets edited, and then that should then go to Notion. But like Dave said, we need to test that.
Great question.
Okay, I got one more here from Matt Medeiros. I'm actually not sure if this is in reference, Matt. Maybe you can let me know if this is in reference to entry blocks or Notion, but he said, could you edit those entries on page?
Yeah, so I'll just answer it from like 3 perspectives. If you're talking about entry blocks, yes, you can edit those on page. If you're talking about in Gravity Forms, let's see.
Sorry. There's a lot of us here, Matt. We're all just behind the scenes right now.
Okay, so yeah, just going back to that, if you are talking about in Notion, then yeah, you can edit it directly in Notion and make any changes that you want. If you're editing it in Gravity Forms directly in the Gravity Forms entry detail page, then again, like you can make changes here. And then if you have that update option enabled that we were just, Clay was just talking about, then any changes you make here would be reflected in Notion.
Cool. I got one more here from Adam. Will Notion feeds offer a way to populate Gravity Form field values, like a drop-down field with property values from a connected Notion database?
Yes, Adam. Yes, it will. So here's the thing. Where it's 1:47. If anyone needs to go ahead and head out. But Adam, I think you asked this question when you signed up for the workshop, and I do have a special demo just for you. So anyone who wants to stay for Adam's private demo, please do. It's going to be fun. So the question again, just to clarify here, is that there's this situation where you have properties in Notion. So let's go over to Notion, and I have this issue reports, right? So this is where people could come and say, hey, this is some issue that I'm experiencing in the workplace. And in this case, like we have this department field here. It's a select, so you can only select one option. And maybe you just want to keep these in sync So you have the customer relations, marketing, development, design, but you don't, if you add a new department or if you take a department away or if there was a typo in one of the departments, you don't want to have to necessarily come into Notion and edit it and then go to all of your forms that you have integrated and then have to edit in those forms as well. Like, it's a very annoying problem. Fortunately, we have a solution that's just about ready, probably going out in the next couple of weeks, and I will demo it for you right now. So I already have this all hooked up. This is our report and issue form: name, email, department, and complaint. And then we're going to go to the department field here, and you're going to see that I'm using Populate Anything. It's one of our most popular perks in the Gravity Perks suite. And we are populating choices dynamically, and we're populating from database properties. This is going to look a little bit different in the final version because it's going to be grouped in a little Notion group. So that way it's clear that these are specific to Notion. Just pointing that out. But we're populating properties from Notion, not pages from Notion in this case. And then we're going to tell it which database we want to look at the properties for. In this case, it's our issues report database. And then for the property that we want, to populate choices from, we want to get the department. And so now we can already see what it gives us. This is going to be the ID that's kind of specific to Notion. That's how it identifies these choices. But then it has the label as well. And so you can see that we have the customer relations, marketing, development, design. It's pulled straight from Notion. And so if we preview this form, you can see that they're populated there. The person submitting the issue can select what department they're having an issue with. And that's pretty much it. But as I was building out this use case, I stumbled across another interesting way to use AI. And that was the ability to summarize the complaint as the title of the card, if you will. So this is the AI feed that I have set up. This time I'm using chat completions, the GPT-4o model, and I'm just have a system message here that says basically summarize the following complaint into as few words as possible to be used as the complaint title in the database. So just kind of a very clear instruction provided as the system level to kind of give it extra authority and make it harder for the a user to misuse this or get it to give you a bad response. And then we indicate the data that's coming from the user here is going to be the complaint. And again, that was just inserted using the merge tag selector here. And we scroll down to the complaint field and boom, it goes in. Again, if you wanted to map this, if you weren't mapping this to Notion, you could map this to a field to just capture this response directly in the entry. But in our case, we're going to map this to Notion. So nothing, no extra steps required there. So now if we go over to Notion, we can see our Notion feed on this one. Again, we're sending this report to Notion. We've already connected it to the issue reports database. The status, ignore the status. It's just used one of the default ones. But you can see that the department, rather than mapping it, so going back to the job application, we mapped it to a specific status, one of the existing values. In this case, we're actually, again, we're trying to let the user decide what property should be mapped or what property value should be mapped in Notion. So we're just gonna let them select that in this department field from the form. And that will go again to the department property in Notion. And then the other thing I didn't demo in the other form that I wanted to demo here was that you can assign these cards to specific people. So in this case, we only have one actual user in this account because it's a free Notion account. But I'll just assign it to my shared account. And that way the user will get notified that, hey, there's a new issue. And hey, you need to go check it out because obviously you want to take care of those as quickly as possible. And then lastly, the name of the card, which honestly probably should be something more like title or subject, is this entry meta field. And this again is the AI feed. It's the summarized complaint AI feed. Whatever response we get from that is going to be mapped to the name field in Notion. And then lastly, we have a page content template here where we just say, hey, here's the complaint, and then we put the merge tag for that. All right, so now if we go here and submit, and I actually have an actual complaint here. All the complaints will be from me because I'm whiny. And I'm going to say this is a customer relations issue. And I have an issue with Jim Morrison. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. All right, that's been submitted. So now let's go over to our issue report. We can see it just came through. Actually, I wonder which one that was. It's probably this one. Actually, I think this is the newer one. And so you can see, first of all, that it has a summary of the complaint. Ideally, this would be even shorter, and you can tweak the prompt to try to get it. You can say like, hey, maximum of like 5 words or something if you wanted to. And that's pretty much the idea. And you can see that it mapped to the department here. Again, going back to this whole idea of using populate anything to map properties from Notion into a field and letting the user select those. And then just for fun, let's do one more demo of that just so we can see it. Again and again, this will be coming from me. And this one's going to be a marketing issue. And this complaint is essentially that my marketing manager, Carly Ray Jepson, she keeps offering me her personal phone number, which is awkward. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. So I submit it. We go to Notion. You see it comes in here. Marketing manager sharing personal number causing discomfort. That's a pretty good summary, I gotta say. And there you go. There's your complaint. Already listed out so that whoever's reviewing this can come in and get the full details about what's going on. And there you go. You can flesh out this workflow from there as far as like what's actually needed for next steps or how you could, craft Notion into making this more useful for that purpose. But I think that's a good example of, again, just like this tight integration between OpenAI and Notion and hopefully future connections as well.
Sorry, just to jump in. It looks like you just had one more follow-up question. Can you read that?
Yes. Looking for the update. Would there be any way to have the gravity form field default to a null value initially so that a user has to select an option and doesn't accidentally leave default? That's a great question. I know for sure that we have a snippet that does this. But it would be an interesting option just to add from like a UI perspective, just like add, placeholder. Yeah. Duh. What am I talking about? This is why I need to use gravity forms more, y'all. So in the dropdown, let's close general. I'm super zoomed in, but here you could say something like this, like select department, save, and then live preview. And you'll see, there you go. And almost got me. Almost got me. Good stuff, though. Great question. Okay. Any other questions before we? Actually, we do have one more question. Chris asked. Well, first he said, this could be useful for private sites or member sites with protected forums. With concern for spam bots and security issues, etc., are there any issues to be aware of? So with Notion, I am not overly concerned. Users will only have access to the Notion data that you populate into the form. So as far as data access, the security is completely in your control because it's only going to populate what you populate. Now, as far as overage charges, running out of pages, if you will, in Notion, Notion claims that they have unlimited pages with all their plans. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, you can see here, pages and blocks. For all of their plans, it's unlimited. If you're on a free plan and you invite other people to your workspace, there are some limits there. But I'm assuming that most people will quickly want to be on at least Plus in Notion to get the most value out of it anyways. So I would not expect there to be any issues with overage charges or just running into issues where you're just at capacity in Notion. The other thing worth noting is, it's funny. I hear a lot about people who are having anti-spam issues in across all the form builders markets. But it's just so interesting because, GravityWiz has several public forums and we just don't have any spam issues, not challenging the spam gods to test us. But I tell you what, we use Akismet, we have Turnstile activated, and we have Honeypot. We have 3 layers. And I mean, sure, like every once in a while we'll get a piece of spam that comes through, but it is exceedingly rare that happens. Cool. Anything else, Cole, before we wrap this workshop up?
I think you're good to go.
Okay, everybody. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming. This was a lot of fun. If you want to do more of these, let us know. We definitely enjoy doing them. And there's just so much like that comes up organically as part of these workshops that I think adds a lot of value. So anything you're interested in, let us know. Otherwise, take care for now. And thank you so much for coming. Have a good one.